Hi, I'm Jeff Miller.
And I'm Anthony Navarro, and welcome to Talk Out Loud, where we share the LGBTQI plus narrative, one story at a time. On this episode of Talk Out Loud, we're here with Aurora Sexton. Aurora is an artist and actress that has had quite the creative career. Growing up in Colorado, she led a pretty interesting childhood. After some tough times with family, Aurora found herself in a unique situation at the age of 13 and had some unexpected sheroes step in to help. At a young age, she fell in love with the art of drag, and channeling her creativity through it led her to a successful career as a top performer. Aurora is an inspirational advocate and beloved member of the trans community. Let's hear Aurora's story.
Oh, Aurora, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming this afternoon to spend some time with us.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, pleasure.
We're excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm just I feel like I've known you for a little while, and I'm excited to get to know some more of you today. Introduce you to some friends and some people that we haven't even met yet. So,
hello, friends.
Yeah, hey,
everybody.
So we're here in Los Angeles. How long have you been here?
I just celebrated 1 year in January. So about a year and a half.
Year and a half. Where were you born?
I was born in Denver, Colorado.
What was Denver like growing up?
I don't ski.
I get asked that question a lot. They're like, "Oh, you ski?" I'm like, no,
you don't ski.
I can,
but not by choice.
Oh no, I mean I would, but I'm not very good at it.
Oh, so Denver? I mean, obviously skiing, the Rocky Mountains. Denver's. What was it like for as a childhood for you? Any like memories that shaped you who you are today? What was family like life?
I mean, in my early childhood, I had a pretty typical suburban American wonder years kind of childhood. I never knew my dad, so I was raised by my mother and grandmother, and they were always very, open-minded and supportive. You know, it was very obvious from an early age that, I was different and into different kinds of things. And when I asked for a Little Mermaid birthday party when I was 6, I think they knew. Still one of my favorite cakes I ever got, by the way. But early on it was pretty good.
Little Mermaid, it's interesting. Like I'm thinking that's probably about the time that movie was out, right? Mm-hmm. Right around then. Was there any sort of in that movie, like imagination or anything like that kind of was incited in what you identified with, or it took you anywhere, anything at all?
Oh, completely. She wanted to change herself to become happy, which later on became true for me as well. But I didn't have an Ursula to go trade away my voice to. I just had a litany of doctors over the years. But yeah, it's I'm really glad that my grandmother really supported me creatively. When she read me to sleep, she didn't read Little Red Riding Hood. She read J.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and like heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But so I think I owe a lot of my love of fantasy to her.
There's a lot of wonderful fantasy in J.R. and C.S. Lewis, but there's, as adults, if I've grown, like my father actually read me the same books as well. And now as an adult, I look back on that. It's just like there's a lot of life's truths that are interwoven into these stories, like heavy stuff that maybe as a kid, you don't necessarily realize how it's speaking, at least for me, how it was speaking to my soul.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then it's just like, oh, wow. And I identified with that then. And now today it's like, oh, wow, what was true then is teaching me even a broader lesson today and what I've become.
Yeah, there's so many things you go back to and as an adult now and you see it and it's like watching something totally different. Especially like the little sexual innuendo jokes they throw in for the adults that no kids get. But now you're like, oh my God, this is filthy.
It's a win-win for everybody who's watching. Yeah. So wonder years growing up, you had a special relationship with your grandmother and your mother. Single mom?
Yes.
Any siblings?
I have a sister, but she didn't come around until my mom married.
So you're growing up, your childhood, though, was primarily yourself, your mom, and your grandmother then?
Yes. And then my mother got married when I was 8, and we moved out to the country.
Outside of Denver?
Far away from everyone.
No skiing out there.
And when I was 13, they had my sister.
spending 12 years of your life previously, well, 8 years with no stepfather, having a male influence and come into your life. And I say that not knowing, was there a male influence in your life previously before that? Or?
I mean, I have uncles.
Yeah.
You know, I have uncles in my family. My grandfather was alive and he died when I was 3.
Yeah.
So I don't have too many memories of him. I do remember I used to sit on his lap and he'd read to me. And I remember him chasing me for a spanking when I was bad. I do remember that.
Did he catch it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He had help. But yeah, that was about it. And, you know, cousins and, you know, neighborhood boys and stuff. But I never really identified with them. You know, I always wanted to hang out with the girls and I wanted to, you know, play with our hair and, you know, put on makeup and, you know, I didn't think of it as feminizing myself at the time. I just thought, oh, I'm having fun.
Yeah, just playing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did your mom and grandma, like growing up that late and wanting to do those sorts of things, were they supportive of that?
Yeah. I mean, they saw that I had talent from an early age. They put me in private art classes with well-known painters in Colorado. They put me in community children's theater. I did a production of Cinderella. I did Jack and the Beanstalk.
Who were you? What roles did you play?
I think in Cinderella I was the prince. I think I was the prince. Jack and the Beanstalk, I was like a background actor, but I knew from the beginning that that's what I wanted to do.
What was it feeling like the first time you were on stage?
Like I was home.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that. Like it's where I belonged.
After you were on there the first time, did you have obviously then a desire to be back home on the stage?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I wish that, you know, we'd had the foresight back then to try and get me into childhood acting, you know, professionally. But, you know, also in Colorado, that's not a big industry. You know, even later, you know, after I transitioned, I mean, the biggest opportunity I could get was, you know, being a Barbizon model. And that you had to pay them $3,000 for some pictures.
Wow. We moved around a lot when I was growing up, but I've never had maybe a new parent enter in my life per se. When you guys move out to the country, so you're 8 years old, and your sister came on at 13. Sorry, you're there, 8 years old. Are you changing schools at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, my whole life changed. My whole life turned upside down. Me and my mother's husband did not get along.
Okay.
Like from the get-go. He was a police sergeant. He had a very authoritative personality, you know, and he was going to get me in shape and, you know, show me who was boss and, you know, where my place was, and which I didn't like and I didn't want. And I fought, you know, tooth and nail against it. My mother, she ran a jail. Her official title was Assistant Director of Youth Correctional Services for Adams County, which is half of Colorado.
Wow.
And which was up where we moved to. Like her work was like 5 minutes away. And when I was a kid, back then, I mean, this would never happen today, but she used to take me to work with her and I would go in the kitchen and I'd help serve the kids meals. I was allowed to go on the floor with the kids where they would read to me. We'd watch movies together. And this, you know, and these were kids that were between, you know, 12 and 18. And they weren't bad kids. They weren't violent kids. They were just, you know, hurt and lost and, you know, getting into trouble for, you know, just stupid things kids get in trouble for. Yeah. It's a whole different crop of kids today. Yeah. Like that would never happen. I would have been held hostage. It just would have been a bad
This was actually more like a safe place for you to be with these kids, sounds like.
Yeah. So I was always, I grew up around, you know, law enforcement and authoritative figures, you know, which I think is one reason I've never been to jail, because I know what it's like. But it was definitely very traumatic for me when we moved.
So you said that he was trying to put you in place or like whip you into shape kind of thing. Did you feel that you were doing anything wrong or anything that was like out of the norm?
I felt like I just wanted to be a kid. I just wanted to have fun and and explore myself creatively. And he, you know, had a vision for me of being a Boy Scout. And I mean, they put me in football and you know, basketball and, you know, all these other sports. And I liked some of it. I liked basketball. I liked soccer. But I mean, football, I'm like, why am I here?
Mm.
And Boy Scouts, you know, I didn't like that either.
Sure.
But
What about all of the creative stuff that you were doing? Were you still in any art classes or plays or?
yeah, I mean, I was, you know, involved in what I could, because out there wasn't a whole lot. You know, we had art class in school, we had drama club, and I participated in those things, but they weren't very encouraged by him.
Was your grandma still around during this time?
Yeah, I mean, I was still in constant communication with her, but my mom was always working, and I think she just, you know, she'd finally found, you know, the man she wanted to marry, and
Sure.
and she was trying to make that work, and I was doing everything to make that not work, so that I could move back to grandma's house. You know, but I think things changed when he started getting physically abusive with me, and some of it, you know, I did need to be, you know, punished because I was acting out, and I was not an easy kid to raise, and I won't pretend I was, but there were things he did that went beyond what was okay. So we had a very tumultuous relationship for 5 years until it got to such a fever pitch of violence in our house that I knew that if I stayed, he was going to kill me, or I was going to kill him defending myself.
Wow. There's something about those years. So this is between the ages of 8 and you said 5 years, 8 and 13 then. I think that there's something that happens within all of us that in different levels that those teenage years where there is something that our bodies are changing, our minds are shaping. There's something that wants to emerge out of us. And if we don't have something to put ourselves into, it's like we are in collision with anything around us. And it's almost like we don't even know what's like for myself, like what's going on. And looking back, I mean, I like how you talked about the fact that you were challenging, but at the same time, like, you know, it's like you were fighting for, but it's like looking back on it for myself, it's like, oh, it's like I needed an outsource. Like I needed something there's something bigger than myself wanting to be and thrive and
Absolutely.
to participate in this world.
Absolutely. And I knew that I was meant to do something big. You know, I just didn't know what. And not only was I going through puberty, I was also, you know, I was horrified, you know, at, you know, the fact that I was growing hair on my legs and my arms. And all of a sudden, you know, by like 12 years old, I had a mustache. And I was like, this is not what's supposed to be happening. And I was having major gender dysphoria. And back then, you know, we're talking about the mid to late 90s. Transgender wasn't a household word. There was very little education on the subject or medical care. And so my family didn't know what I was going through. I didn't know what I was going through. You know, and here I have a man who's trying to make a man out of me when I'm not a man. And I really never was. And I remember being on medications and in and out of therapy from the time I was very little. And I thought it was just because I was hyper. And I asked my grandmother one day, I was like, why was I always on pills? And she said, because you wanted to wear dresses. And we didn't know what to do with you. And everything just clicked into place. You know, and even my mom said, you know, once we figured out you were trans, so much made sense that we never understood before.
Saying that for your mom realized, when did you realize for yourself? Or was it kind of like a educational thing?
I think I always knew in some way, you know, or another. I always knew that I was drawn to feminine things. I always knew that I resonated more with female heroines or female characters. And
were there any trans characters at that time that you?
No.
Right.
The only trans people you saw at that time were on Maury Povich or Jerry Springer, and they were always a joke, you know, or a punchline. The first trans woman that was presented beautifully that I can remember was, I was 12 years old, and there was a special on HBO called Drag Time. And it was all the who's who of the day, you know, Jackie Beat, Lady Bunny, and Candace Kane came out on stage in this catsuit and just twirled around, the gorgeous blonde hair. And I was like, I don't know how she looks like that, but I want to look like that. And then I started, and this was also before like internet was just like starting up and stuff. So I could delve into it and I could, find out like, oh, that's what this is.
So so you have this life force of who you are emerging and wanting to come out. What finally happened? Obviously I look at you today and I know something must have happened, because here you are standing in all of your beauty and just your eyes and everything. Yeah.
I need you to wake me up like that every morning.
Happy to call you.
I think freedom is what did it for me. For many years, I was really angry about what happened in that house and how I felt that my mom turned a blind eye to all the things he was doing to me. Because it wasn't just physical abuse. There was a lot of mental and emotional abuse. And he basically dismantled my whole childhood and took everything away that I ever cared about. And those feelings of anger stayed with me well into my 20s. But if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I wouldn't have met the people I've met. Because I was out on the street at 13. And I didn't live on the street for long. I was mostly living in friends' homes, crashing on couches. I got involved in the drag scene in Denver through a gay support group that I went through. We met some professional drag queens, and they ended up taking me in like one of their children and raising me, essentially. There were two queens, Trinity and Eve, who I still speak with. And Trinity Brian, he became like, a father figure for me. And they made sure I was going to school, and my mother was still involved, and all that. She never just abandoned me. She wanted to know who I was living with, where I was staying, if I was safe, if I was, being taken care of, and I was. So, from there, I got started in the nightclubs very young. I started doing shows at the bars at 14 and actually 13. And I got away with that for 2 years. Until they found out how old I was.
You found your stage again, huh?
Yeah. But 16 years old, I got invited into my first professional showcast. It was the only professional showcast in town. My mother had to sign a parental consent for me to participate. And a year later, I started at Trax 2000, which was the biggest club in Colorado. And that just snowballed into a very long and successful career.
That's amazing.
Wow.
It's interesting because, you say, I found this drag outlet. And today, drag is so prevalent. But this is, you said, a couple minutes before this that, it was before internet. So I'm thinking, that you couldn't just, you had to go on phone books back then, right?
And that's how I found the support group. I think I was 11 or 12, flipping through the phone book looking for the word gay.
Wow.
Because I knew I liked boys.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, obviously I'm gay. So I was just flipping until I found it. And then I was like, well, I do like boys, but maybe I'm straight, because I'm a girl.
Wow.
Or I'm meant to be a girl.
Yeah. That's, you have a lot of wisdom and self-awareness to be able to figure that out. That's at that age, I would think. And for me, it's awesome we've identified that there was no representation on television. And just the dysphoria that you had when puberty started, the gender dysphoria specifically, being able to see someone who looks like yourself, or possibly to show that you exist in the media. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that's meant to you?
It's a completely different world now than it used to be. From, as far as a drag perspective, there's a lot of people, that think, there's a cleared line between trans people and drag artists. And that's true, there is. But there are drag artists that are trans, and many of the pioneers of the art form were trans. They've once drag was commercialized, and fed to the masses by RuPaul's Drag Race, trans people were left out of that narrative. And if you live in Hollywood, you kind of understand how things work here. You find a formula that works, you package it right, and the the biggest age bracket for drag entertainment now is 12 to 18-year-old girls. Isn't that crazy?
That is.
Yeah.
I mean, like you think, I don't know, you think drag, you just think it's like, it goes back, it's like a cultural thing
Yeah.
in our community.
Well, and back
you don't
in
think
and back in the day,
12-year-old girls.
I mean, back in the day, we're not even that old. Back in the day, it was.
Right.
I lived in Boys Town, Chicago for a decade, and I worked full time every night in drag shows, and those shows were packed.
Yeah.
It was all gay audiences, and we had a blast. It was fun, and I'm so glad I got to be a part of that golden age of it, because when it went mainstream and commercialized, has it done wonderful things for a lot of artists? Yeah, but it also left a lot of artists out and behind. And it really changed the dynamic of the gay bars. That's when you saw more bachelorettes coming in. You saw more straight people coming in, and I mean, that's what we've worked toward. We've been working toward integration, but you be careful what you wish for.
Right. Right. It's like that safe haven that we had, that place, that
Yeah.
home base that we went to.
Yeah,
it was sort of like infiltrated.
It went from being a safe haven to a petting zoo.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you see a lot of pushback, from people in the gay community, against bachelorettes and people in that realm. And also, amazing things have happened for trans people, in the past decade, especially with having more representation in film and television, and a better understanding and grasp of, who trans people are and why we are the way we are, that this isn't a choice. I would not choose to struggle and have to go through, the painful surgeries that I've gone through to become comfortable in my own skin. It's a lot. It's a process. And I also should say, being trans isn't, just physical. Being trans is a state of mind. And some people choose not to have surgery. Some people choose not to have hormone therapy, and then some people choose to just get scraped and rebuilt like I did. It's all a personal choice. And now you've got a whole language coming out, where people are gender fluid and there's all types of sexualities and gender nonconforming people. It's a lot to learn. It can be overwhelming at times, even if you are part of that culture, but I think the bottom line of all of it is that everybody just wants the right to exist and be happy and live a good life, and not be harassed or discriminated against because of how they choose to live or who they choose to love.
So you were just saying, when it comes to seeing, people within the community on television and in these sort of there's more roles for people on TV. Do you think that that's helped create more visibility in a more positive way?
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Because you have, because it creates less misunderstanding.
right.
Because, the politics that are at play in our country are very much about divide and conquer. And gay people have been used as the scapegoat, by hard right conservatives for years to drum up their voter base, to drum up religious voters, and say, vote for us, or, the gays will come and, snatch your children and, God forbid, maybe decorate your home. But I know, horrible stereotype.
Horrible things.
Horrible stereotype. But now, the past couple years, trans people are now the new boogeymen, or boogie women, or boogie people, that we're going to invade private spaces, that we're coming into the bathroom to be perverts or to harass your wives and daughters. And look, when I'm going into the bathroom, I've got to do one of two things. And then I got to touch up my face, tussle my hair, and get out of there. I'm not interested in you. I don't care what you're doing. You leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. But now, we've got court cases winding through about, are trans people allowed to play sports?
Right.
Are we allowed to compete against cisgender women? Are we, allowed to use a bathroom, or just be. And now with the Trump administration, they're going after our access to medical care. And I think at this point they think if they can't, stop us later on, they might as well nip it in the bud right away and not even allow us to medically transition at all. And I can't tell you how important it would have been for me and how important it was for me to see somebody like me on TV and know that I wasn't by myself, especially living out in the middle of nowhere where I lived, feeling like hopelessly alone. And to see some goddess, strutting by on TV, I knew that there was a bigger world out there for me.
Thanks for really talking about all that. I feel like it's been relevant for forever, but now even so much more so.
I think I would add to, I felt like I had to give up my dreams of acting and performing for a long time because I didn't see anybody like me and I didn't think it was possible and that I would be welcomed and accepted. And that's the reason I moved out to Hollywood this year, because I finally saw that it was possible and that it could happen.
Right.
And I wanted to be that person that young people see on TV and say, wow, she made it, I can make it too.
There's so much strength and power in everything you just said right there. There's this, it's been proven, right? Like with the Olympics, say, when the first man broke whatever said, oh, a man will never be able to run this fast. And then a man did it, or then a woman did it, and then a person did it. And then after the other person did it, then another person then beat that record. And then and it's just something about the way it works where, I think from an infancy, we're looking for a mom or a dad to be that person. And sometimes, and everyone has their limitations, right? So like no one can be all those things to me. One person cannot be all those things.
Sure.
Right. So the importance of being able to see those figures in different, like, that's what, some people are talented with decorating. Some people are, good for a glam squad. Some people are good at, installing toilets and, plumbing. And we're all better because of all of us together.
Absolutely.
And the fear, like the fear of the unknown has been used to hurt a lot of people, and I generally believe in the good of people. But part of that is when someone's been able to have an experience with someone who is different from themselves, whether it be trans, gay, a different ethnicity, I can see the human being in you, the humankind, the divinity in you, in your soul, right? And that is why that you see, I think sometimes people want to be like, oh, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in insurance, like it's not an option for, and people think, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, no, it does matter because that all affects everything. And when you say someone doesn't exist, then you're preventing the humanity to happen between the two of us. And I think that some people just don't understand the seriousness of the implications of some of these politics. Some people say, oh, I'm not into politics. People are so frustrated with the political climate. No, now is the time to really get involved because the politics are the policies that live and decide how we operate as a world. And I would encourage anyone right now, especially this year, to, register to vote. And what one person can do on a grassroots level. I mean, look at you today, this child who was in Denver who decided to dream, and we really haven't touched about too much. You ended up in Chicago eventually. How did you get there?
I was 20 and I had two friends that were moving there, and I didn't feel like there was anything left for me to do at the time in Denver. And I was like, I'm just going to spin my wheels. I've got to go see the world. And so I had $500, a couple of suitcases, and I hit it.
You hit it? Just hit the road?
I hit it. And it was the best move I could have made, and it kind of set up the rest of my life.
What happened there what laid the groundwork for what was going to happen?
I was just going out in Boys Town and meeting. Actually, the first week I got there, there's a very famous pageant called Miss Continental that they have every Labor Day weekend in Chicago. It's been going on since 1980, and it's a contest for some people like to use female impersonators, drag artists, but it's prolifically been for trans women, like the most gorgeous women you've ever seen. And I walked in and it just changed my whole life. And, through that system, I made a lot of friends that worked in a lot of industries. And then I started getting booked at the clubs in Chicago and I got really good at it. And then I was put on permanent cast pretty much everywhere. There was a period where I was the only girl on the strip that was allowed to work at every bar. because most bars and clubs are very, if you work there, you don't work anywhere else. And I was like, well, if you want to pay me to be exclusive, we can talk. But until then, I'm going to work where I need to work.
Yeah.
And it was great for me. I made lifelong friends, family. Even, living here now in Los Angeles, I still meet so many people, that I met, back in Chicago.
When you decided to take that chance to go to Chicago, what got you there? What got you to do it? Like,
I had nothing to lose.
oh, wow.
I had nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And you showed up when you got there, you showed up at all these, I can picture you at Spin, Berlin, I'm naming,
Yeah.
were you at both those venues, no?
Well, they didn't even have shows at Berlin back then.
No,
You know, this was that's when Berlin was like, you'd go there to dance the rest of your night away after you'd done the shows. I was on cast at Hydrate with Taj Mahal for 7 years. I was on cast at Kit Kat Lounge. I was on cast at Spin nightclub. I was on cast at the Baton Show Lounge. And was that it? Charlie's.
And for those who don't know it, the Baton is like world famous.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to be at Baton and all these other places that says so much about who and what. And also, what I'm hearing also is like there was a business mindset to you as well too.
Yeah, I mean, it is a business, and you have to treat it like a business. You have to take it seriously. And there are a lot of people that get into, showbiz, or especially, drag shows and gay bars. And they're like, well, it's just a fun hobby, and they have day jobs. It was my full-time job, and I loved it. I loved it. I got to perform, I got to act, I got the attention, and I was getting paid to do it. And then I started traveling and being booked everywhere. And once I got involved in the pageant circuits, and I started winning big national contests, I would win nationwide tours. So I was literally flying all over the U.S. to all these different clubs and venues, and this was still pre-Drag Race, So if you made it like that, you made it.
That was it.
That was it. That was it. Until Drag Race came in later and kind of monopolized all that.
Yeah. But I mean, for you to be able to do to work the strip, right? To be in all these different places, and then to be traveling, and then in the pageant circuit, that means that means you were really good. You're really good at it, right?
I was all right.
I mean, because you can. It's almost like you were saying, like people were kind of like dabbling in it, like part-time, and like they had a day job and like whatever. But like if you're putting all of your energy, all of your time into like all of this, like the creative side, you have to be really good. So like from a creative perspective, how do you approach your performances? How does that work?
I mean,
if
I get inspired by anything, if something tickles me in my no place, I like to do it. I don't do anything I don't enjoy. I think that's important. You have to find joy and passion in the things you do. And I, as an actor, I love seeing how my work resonates with other people. I love making people laugh or, or think or, so a lot of my performances had a lot of comedic elements or I just tried to think outside the box. Whatever everybody was doing, I did the opposite because I wanted to stand out.
Right.
And I didn't want to be this.
And these things that you're doing, the opposite, are things that bring you joy, though, at the same time.
Yeah.
As well.
Absolutely. People think because that I'm pleasing to the eye, that I should just be pretty and just have at it that way. And I was like, no, I want to put in whiteout contacts and cover myself in blood and scream at everybody and throw pop babies out my butt. And, just be crazy. And I gained a following doing wild stuff like that. And I literally looked at myself as, walking art. And then when I got into celebrity lookalikes, that's when I started doing a lot of corporate events, private events, where I impersonate everybody from Dolly Parton to Joan Rivers.
Oh, yes.
A lot of, bachelorette parties and things like that, and that was, And that kind of really solidified my standing in the community.
You have to go on Aurora's Instagram. She's got some good Joan out there still, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes, please stalk me, Aurora Sexton.
That's Anthony has been a Joan Rivers fan forever. When I saw your Joan Rivers, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, perfect. Yeah.
John, can we talk?
There she is. Thank you. How long were you in Chicago, just out of curiosity?
I was there for 7 years. And then I won a pageant called National Entertainer of the Year in Kentucky, and I was offered a job at Play Dance Bar in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I was at the peak of everything I was doing in Chicago, but I was getting bored. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to try living in the South at least once. Let's just do it, because if it doesn't work out, I can always come back. So I left, and that was also a wonderful adventure for me too. I had a great 7 years there. It's where I made so many good friends, because that's one of the biggest, most popular destinations in the South for queer people to go and party at. And in Nashville especially, we worked with so many big-name musical artists. We've had actors come through. I mean, it was not uncommon to come out in the hallway and, Troye Sivan or Kelly Clarkson, or the Real Housewives or whoever, was there, to meet us. You're here to meet us? Wow.
Well, and when you say us at Play, you did more actual. I mean, this is not just like showing up and singing a song. You're doing actual production work here.
So I was on a full-time cast of 7 girls that were kind of hand-picked from all over the country and brought together, and we did 3 shows a night, 4 nights a week, plus production numbers. I mean, they worked us hard, but we were also taken care of very well. We were on full-time salaries, plus all our tips. We kept all our drag at work. Brooklyn Heights is one of my closest friends, and that's where, not long after I moved there, she moved there. And so we became neighbors, and at work and at home. She literally lived across the hallway from me. And now we're both out here in LA, and she's obviously achieved an amazing amount of success, and it's really cool to see. It's really cool to see so many people I've met over the years stepping into so many wonderful things, and not just success for themselves, but making things better for everybody else in the process.
Up until now, there's been a lot of you, like in Chicago, like on your own, like hitting it hard. And I'm sure in Chicago there was people that were supporting you.
Absolutely. And honestly, I owe most of my success to people that invested their time and their energy and their feelings, in me, because they believed enough in me.
So was there like somebody who was a source for you in that time period?
I never had any older brothers. I always wanted them, so I've kind of collected them over the years. But I had several friends I was very close with. Our mutual friend Steven, who's no longer with us. He was my big brother in every way, and he'd tell me when I was wrong. He'd celebrate me when I was right. And no matter what I was doing, he just wanted me to do it well. I also had a drag mother, Aurora Sexton, which I met in Colorado. And her and her husband, Christian, raised me and like 30 other kids, in their house, but they invested in us. It wasn't just like the drag shows. They invested in our futures and our careers. Kira Walter got me my first job as a makeup artist, and taught me the ways of being a professional in that realm. And when I got to Chicago, I met Monica Monroe, who was a legendary prolific trans performer back in the day. And she poured everything she was into me. And she also helped guide me through being trans, just being a trans woman in the world, which I didn't know anything about. To be in a city where I saw women like me everywhere, it was like, I'm home.
Yeah. I think it's so important for younger people, especially. You took a chance on yourself. If you're not going to take a chance on yourself, like
nobody else will.
Yeah. And then, so once you've got that, and then you chose to surround somebody, and I've never heard anyone say this before, and I knew Steven, he was an amazing individual. who was like a big brother to you. The fact that you said he would celebrate the victories and also tell you when you were wrong. And for me to surround myself with people also that are always going to tell me yes, yes, yes. That's not really I used to think that's what a friend was.
No.
And the people, and I am better for it to surround myself with people like that.
Absolutely. All my friends that I count in my close circle are brutally honest with me. And I'm brutally honest with them.
Right. Yeah. And there's something about like, if I really care about someone and I'm not just looking for them to affirm, what's what I'm looking for, to affirm, if I'm looking to get something from them that I'm not getting from like God or source or whatever like that, then I'm going to forever looking for someone's approval. But I can look at you in the eye and say, you know what, this was good, but this right here, and I didn't feel this. That's what that's when we're stronger and we're better with each other. And to be able to see then in Nashville what you accomplished, and then when you start having people like celebrities or other people that then are seeing, like they're identifying, yeah, you've got it. Like these people, and there's something that happens when science proves that when 2 or 3 people come together, that we actually leave changed and we create something that's bigger than ourselves. To me, it's just really interesting to see how you have grown over the years. You reap the rewards of the decisions you've made and who you surround yourself with. And I think that anyone listening to understand that when you feel something like that's coming from somewhere, and there's something about truth. And when you find that, like hold on to that, and then have your feet follow. Does that make any sense at all?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because sometimes it's easy to be like, when you see somebody on TV, it's like, oh wow, look at them. It's like, no. She made so many little steps that added up to where she is today.
And she probably got 500 no's before somebody said yes.
Yeah, and you're standing on those no's today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm on a mountain of them.
Yeah, right.
I've been rejected more. And that's also kind of the business that we're in, that I'm in.
Yeah.
But
everyone just to stop you for a second there. Yeah. We all get rejected. We all get rejection. But I think with what you do, it's easy to make. And I'm not an actor or an actress. There's something maybe to think: is it me because I'm the brand more so, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think pageantry really taught me how to accept rejection. Because in my earlier days starting, I wasn't a good loser.
How do you accept it? How do you deal with that? How have you done? What's been helpful with you with that?
You just have to learn from your mistakes and learn how to clap and applaud for other people when it's their time to shine, so that they'll do the same for you when it's yours.
Yeah, that's great.
I think in that realm, you get so emotionally invested in things, and when it doesn't go your way, you're like, how could this not happen for me after I spent all this money, But that's again when you have the brutally honest friends that come in and say, "Girl, you weren't on it. Right. It wasn't your night, and that's okay. Let's do a shot and go to Waffle House, and you'll be fine tomorrow."
God bless Waffle House. Yes.
Yeah, and here, as an actress, every audition you go to, you walk in, you do your best, and then kiss it goodbye. Forget about it.
Wonderful.
And if it comes back, amazing. If it doesn't, that's okay because there'll be more. Right. I've had, several shows here that I thought I was going to get on, that I did the audition, I got callbacks, they put me on hold, and then it didn't happen. And the more it happens, the more okay I'm with it, because I know that something else is going to come along and that eventually somebody is going to say yes.
Right. Well, and especially with that, when it comes to casting, I feel like it's a very complex situation because they're looking at you, they're looking at the other cast, they're trying to figure out how people are going to interact with each other. So, but I think I think part of it, though, somewhere, I'm guessing that you sort of have to disconnect. You have to disconnect yourself from that and know that they're looking for you to represent a role, and it may have nothing to do with you.
Absolutely, it really has nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's you are a vessel for their story, and when you walk in that room, the writers, the people that concepted the show, they already have a vision in their head of what this character looks like, how they speak, how they walk, how they talk. And either you fit that or you don't. Or you give them a new idea, a new narrative of what that character could or should be. And then they just fall in love with you and make the character fit you. And I think, that's another reason it's so important for people in general, but trans people especially, to be comfortable, in their bodies, and be at peace in their mind and their soul, so that they can put their best foot forward out into the world. Because that's something that I think cisgender people, you don't wake up fighting your body, or having to spend all the money you've made in your life to correct, or bring your body in tune with your mind, But once I crossed that line, my life just became easier and happier. And I could actually go into auditions and not think about, are they clocking me? Are they looking at, something on me that, is, too masculine? Like those self-deprecating thoughts don't follow me into an audition room.
And I think that's what I love that you said that, because that's what everyone can have a self-deprecating thought. For trans, it's something that is very sensitive, and I want to make sure I don't try to. I think I just pause and just let's call out the elephant in the room, like that. As a society, right? No. I'm the elephant in the room right now. Let's just clear about that. Is that with people that, especially being like I can choose as a white gay man whether or not like I can hold back my homosexuality. Like I can walk into a room, I can get an Uber, and someone can say, "Oh, you got to," I can easily say, "My wife at home," I have that privilege. Let's just say, right? And then, if I really have the language for this, but to understand, I think I would just echo what you just said, as far as like to anyone, do what you got to do for yourself.
Yeah.
And now that's you've been able to go forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I also have benefited greatly from my privilege as well. Being a white trans woman, most people that meet me don't know I'm trans, and I would, a lot of people, I'm using their words, not mine, have referred to me as being passable, and I can blend into society and not be treated any other way. But I see plenty of other trans women who are treated terribly because they don't pass as well. I've never been stopped because of the color of my skin in a department store, asking, did you pay for that? Or, been followed around by secret shoppers and stuff. Because I've been out shopping with girlfriends of mine who are Black and brown, and I see how they're treated compared to how I'm treated. And it is very different. And I think, with everything that's going on right now with Black Lives Matter, I mean, this has all been a long time coming. Okay. But you're also seeing a lot of reckonings happening within our community when it comes to the culture and perpetuating white muscle men above everybody else. Right. In the way we advertise, in the way we, construct our nights, who we hire, who is allowed to become managers.
It didn't just happen. We built it that way.
Yeah. It was built that way, and now it needs to be dismantled.
Right. And that just goes to so much why intention, and to really think about what are your actions, what we're doing as a society. It's interesting. Like there's an interesting documentary out right now about investigating the case of the death surrounding Marsha P. Johnson. Sylvia Rivera is on there as well too, and I would encourage anybody to watch it.
Please do.
That we stand on the shoulders of someone who said this is not true and threw a brick. Who then had the courage? Like she was a wise woman beyond her years.
They all were.
Yeah, they all were, and they had an awareness of. They knew the world didn't work the way we thought it would, and they were able to show us that it didn't have to.
But they got lost in translation because gay men don't want to fuck them. There's such a worship of masculinity in the community, and even as accepted and celebrated as I've been throughout the communities that I've lived in, there is still a glass ceiling for me.
Yeah, we got to keep breaking it
because I rejected my masculinity, and but there are gay men that don't understand that.
Yeah,
and they're in fact revolted by it.
Yeah, well, and I feel like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, and that's why you see, trans people, having such a comeuppance now because they've been, ignored and relegated to the sides. I mean, when they made Stonewall, the movie a couple years ago, that was a joke. It was completely whitewashed, and it made the white man the hero instead of the trans women of color that actually kicked the whole thing off.
Right. Well, I think what is really important then, going back to what you said, it's like when you get into that Uber, you can't say that you're married to a woman. You have to say who we are. Like we all do. It's our responsibility because we have to keep our awareness out there. And I feel like, from living in my perspective, right? Like Jeff said, that he could, hide or pass or, whatever that is. Even like what you just said, like you're passable. It's one of those things that we shouldn't be passable. We should just be who we are. And we need to do that. And I think like something happens when, I'm going to use the Uber example. If I'm in an Uber and I'm having a conversation and nothing comes up about, me being a gay man, none of that comes up. And then I may say, oh, well, my husband's going to, pick me up when I leave here or whatever. There's something that changes in the conversation where you see sometimes like the person who you're talking to, they may not have a lot of experience with gay people, with people in our community. But when you show them you're human, you show them that I am a person who just happens to be LGBTQ plus, like whoever you are, it influences in a positive way their experience with our community. That's why it's so important. Absolutely. I feel like we just all have to none of us can hide. None of us should have to worry about. We have to
put ourselves out there and be visible. I think the best example I could give of that is my sister married her high school sweetheart. They got married when they were 21, and he is a Trump supporter. Mm-hmm. He is not the typical Trump supporter. When we think of Trump supporters, in our mind, we like to group them into, people that aren't very intelligent and that are, just slobbering knuckle draggers. And there are a lot. But there are also, people that come from conservative, or religious backgrounds, that they see an R by it. And that's just how they've been trained to vote. And so when I met him and his family, he's a lovely man. And his family is lovely. They're all wonderful people. And I was very scared. I was very nervous going in to meet them because I didn't know how they were going to treat me or react. And obviously, this is from my sister, who I love very much, and I wanted to make her happy. And were there people that had questions? Yeah, but nobody was asking me anything that was rude, or that I felt was too personal. And her husband told me later on, he's like, you know what? I've never met anybody like you, but I'm glad I did. Yeah. Because there's so much I didn't know, but that I know now. And even now we have talks about, what's going on in our political landscape. And he's like, well, look, he's like, I don't know who I'm going to vote for right now, but I'll always look at all the issues. Right. And obviously if something comes up, that's going to discriminate against, LGBTQ people, I'm not going to vote for it. And I said, but that's not enough. You can't just vote against the bill. You have to vote against the people who support and write those bills too.
So creating that awareness, though, that's what's going to eventually change the world. That's what, is again, that your interaction with him and just showing him who you are as a human being, as just in connecting on a human level, like taking all of our differences and throwing them to the side. That's what I feel like is going to just really make the biggest change that we need in the world.
And that's why I've never lived stealth. Which for those of you listening who don't know what that means, stealth is when trans people do not disclose that they're trans. They just, live their life. And there are many people that they're happy to have their sex change and just move on with their life. They're not part of a movement. They're not part of a community. They're not part of any of it. They just want to live happily. And then there are those of us that have decided to live our lives publicly and speak about these things because we know how important it is, I think for us it's a calling to actually go out and leave this world better than when we came into it. Janet Mock, who is one of the biggest trailblazers, in our community, she had a full sex change and was editor for Marie Claire for years, and nobody knew until she decided that it was time.
And that's a very personal thing, and everyone should be able to make that
Yeah,
decision for themselves.
it is very personal. I think, there's a lot of, some people are being afraid of being outed as well, because being trans is acceptable now, but I mean, you talk a decade or more ago, people were losing their jobs, their homes, their families. They still are.
Yeah.
It was like if you were trans, that was your career was done.
Right.
Everything you worked for in your life was gone.
Right.
Yeah. We were watching Disclosure the other night, which is another great documentary.
Yes, if you please, everybody go to Netflix, watch Disclosure. It is the most transformative documentary I've ever seen on trans, period.
Yeah, I cannot echo that enough, what you just said there. And the thing is, I want to bring that back to that, is that they show in that documentary, and I remember watching this when it originally aired on Sex and the City, when Samantha's living in the meatpacking district, and she buys this new loft, and she's so excited about it. And there's a woman down below that are walking the streets that are loud at night. That's some of the things she said we wouldn't say today. And it talks about the understanding. It's like when you don't allow, back to what Aurora just said, what you just said, is that when we don't allow human beings to work and to exist, then you're left to what are you left with? What are you left for work options? How are you left to survive?
Yeah.
And the sexualizzations of transgendered individuals has been built on this. That's why the death and rape rates are, I'm sure you could give us some knowledge on that, especially for women of color that are transgendered, today, what that's like.
I think that was one reason I was pushed so, I pushed so hard towards being a showgirl, when I was younger, because a lot of my other girlfriends were sex workers and I just didn't have the stomach for it. But there's so many more options now today. I know trans women trans men, trans people, period, that work in every field, in every facet and tier of society. And before that wasn't available at all. Yeah. And still to this day, I don't have statistics in front of me, but Black trans women of color are killed and at a much higher rate than the rest of society. Yeah. They're more likely to live in poverty. The average life expectancy of a trans woman, Black trans women especially, is 35 years old.
And that's today. That's not 20 years ago. This is today.
That's today.
Right.
That's today. Yeah. Because and a lot of these women are having to put themselves in unsafe situations just so they can eat.
Right. Yeah.
Or have a roof over their head.
Which, and I'm glad you said that, because in the fact that about with your brother-in-law, that's been 9 out of 10 times, if I am, because fear is the driving, so much of it's in my head, what I think somebody else thinks about me. And honestly, like, if I'm right with the world, with God, knowing who and what I am, that I'm a child of God, that I was made perfectly, and that I am the best when I'm serving everything that was made in that recipe, right? And so once I'm able to, and I'm not looking for that approval from other people, I can sit down with the person who may be a part, and I'm already telling myself stories about this person before I've met them, and there may be something about their policy that, like, maybe they have a small business that maybe with some of the stuff that was passed under the previous administration really made it challenging for them as a small business. Which it's good for me to understand that, because sometimes I can't wrap my head around the fact when someone would vote to do something that would actually cause people to have an average life of 35 years old. And the thing is that there's a lot of stuff that we're all working. There's a lot of good humanity out there, is what I'm trying to say. But where we can't negotiate is on the value of someone's life as a human being. But if we're not having conversations and we're not having experiences, then we just get stuck, right? And it just doubles down. And I'm not saying I'm not giving any excuses for anyone who hate is never acceptable. But we've got to be able to sit down with the person and be able to have a conversation to see who and what you are, who I am, and then be in turn. I'm kind of going on a tangent here because I get really worked up about this. When after Anthony and I got married, we had another family member for myself, an extended family member, get married, and we got to go to their wedding later that year. And It's actually Anthony's story. If you want to share about that for just for a second.
Yeah. So they, Jeff's family, who decided not to come to our wedding. And it was, I think, in part that I don't know if they didn't know what to expect, or maybe it wasn't like right in their belief system, or they just didn't want to come. And we went to this other family member wedding, and we sort of first met everybody at the wedding reception. And it was kind of like a warm welcome, but kind of like, I don't know, there was a little bit of like, not really sure if I was welcome. Mm-hmm. So the next day we went to like the brunch after the wedding, and we're sitting there, and I was with Jeff's mom at the kitchen table, and one of the members of the family who didn't come to our wedding was there, and we were having this conversation, and all of a sudden she started telling me how her church doesn't believe in my lifestyle, and that that her church tells her not good things about people in my community and all of these things. But I kind of like derailed that conversation, and we just kind of like went on and just kept talking just about everyday stuff. And at the end of that moment, she grabbed my hand and she goes, I really have never met too many people like you, but I'm going to tell you something. I love you. And I'm going to think about my perspective and, change my ways, not change my ways, but you've changed my thought process and how I feel about people like you.
That's great.
Yeah. And I think sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think, part of all of this it's like, again, it just goes back to that simple thing. Like, we have to have these conversations. We have to have visibility. Going back to that Sex and the City episode, that whole clip, I remember watching that, and whenever that was, 02, 03, whenever that was, I didn't even realize they were trans right away. I thought they were drag queens. Like, and I think part of it is we've come such a long way because we're able to have the conversation. There is the dialogue. We can talk about who we are,
Yeah.
But I think we're still such a far way
off. We're
just
so
so far.
But it's, it's important also not to have a knee-jerk reaction every time somebody says something like that. Because I can't promise I wouldn't have said, well, my church doesn't believe in your hairstyle. You're still wearing it. But yeah, I think people are just ignorant about a lot of issues, and it has a lot to do with how they're raised. And one of my first jobs was working at a salon, and there was a stylist that was there like that. Very kind lady. And this was, before everything. I think I was 13. It was like a after school program. And they knew, there was a lot of sugar in my tank. And she took my hand one night, and she was like, and she said something similar to me. She was like, that, I think you need to, find God and get on a better path, and, very savior service. But she didn't like tell me I was going to hell, and threatened me with fire and brimstone. Right. Which I appreciated, much later on in life, when I actually got that treatment, from some people.
So Nashville, you're there for 7 or 8 years, you said?
Nashville, I was there for 7 years.
7 years.
Long time.
In Chicago, you got bored, or maybe you felt like you'd accomplished what you could do in Chicago. Was there a similar feeling in Nashville?
Yeah, well, Nashville, I got very comfortable.
Interesting.
Because we were very pampered, and we were all kept women. And it just became monotonous for me. I didn't feel challenged creatively anymore. I wasn't, it was like Groundhog Day every day. I'd come out in my showgirl costume, and I felt like, welcome to the buffet at Caesar's Palace every 30 minutes, even though it was a great venue and I liked, the people I worked with. There was more I wanted in my life. And I started thinking about the goals I had and dreams I had when I was a kid. And I was like, well, honey, you ain't getting any younger. So if you're going to do it, you better do it now. So I quit my job and packed up and moved out to Los Angeles. And I think, in 2016, I won Miss Gay USofA, which was a huge contest that opened a lot of doors for me, and in a lot of ways reinvigorated my national career. And that just kind of told me, like, yeah, girl, you still got it in you.
Yeah.
You just have to go and do it.
That was that little push you needed? Or
Yeah, well, it was a big push.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, and when that happened, I got signed to a management company out here, and I found my agent, who recently passed away. Rest in peace, Susan. And I just saw that there was so much more I could do, and so I had opportunities to do cabaret theater out in P-Town, which, if you've never been to P-Town, it's a beautiful seaside resort, gay queer mecca since the 40s. So my manager called me and she said, I've got an opening at this theater house. Can you fill 55 minutes? And it's a gig for the summer. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I have to write a whole show. I've never done this before. I didn't sing live. I didn't do anything. And I looked at the TV and it was CNN and they were interviewing Melania Trump. And I was like, oh, I got this. And so I wrote this show about kind of like Melania. It was called Diary of a First Lady. Let Them Eat Cake, Diary of a First Lady. And it was her view of what it was like being the first lady in the White House and all the shit she has to put up with, and how torturous it is for her. And it was a hit. I got great reviews. We ended up touring it all over the United States, down to Puerto Vallarta. That really motivated me to finally pursue film and television. And so then I just moved out here, and the rest is history.
And to anybody who hasn't been to P-Town, which is just a fun experience, remind me what venue were you at or performing at?
I was at the Post Office Cafe.
Oh, which is, to anyone who has not been, that's a big deal, guys. Like, everyone listening, that is one of the places. I saw Jimmy James there years ago.
Yeah, Jimmy James did it. Barla Jean Merman. Elvira got her start there. Madame the Puppet from the 70s was created there.
There's a lot of magic that happens there.
Yeah, and it's a tiny little jewel box upstairs. It's not like this big prolific theater, but the history.
It's an institution.
Of it, yeah. Oh, I'm sure there's still sequins from Elvira's dress embedded in the carpet.
You're out selling your show during the day, right?
Yeah. So we have to, if you have a show in town, you have to bark. And barking means you get all done up in your costumes, in full drag, and you're basically walking up and down the street, handing out flyers, trying to get people to come buy tickets for your show.
You give them a glimpse of what the show is going to be here. And
Yeah, so I'd be walking up and down the street as the first lady, and all these people are like, what the fuck going on, because it's also a very liberal town.
Yeah.
So to see like Melania Trump walking around, is a little jarring at first. But obviously the show is very political. It was kind of my protest against the administration. And a lot of people got upset watching my show because I didn't hold back anything. Mm-hmm. I think people came in thinking it was going to be some tongue-in-cheek adult humor, and then we just went for it. It was graphic, sexually explicit, vulgar, disgusting. I'm trying to think of all the other reviews I got. Closing night, there was a group of women that came in. I'm assuming conservative, because they were very upset when they left. And on the way out, they told the DJ, one of the women said, "This is the worst piece of shit I've ever seen." So we put that on all the flyers going forward. The worst piece of shit you'll ever see. There were people that came out, they would not shake my hand. Because when the show was over, they let you out the back, and I would greet every guest that came out. And people were just, you could tell who it really affected and who didn't. But there were also people that came out crying, that thanked me, who told me it was important. And really, I think that's what my work has evolved into, is I want to do things that are important. I want to do things that are impactful and that have influence and that push our society to be more fair for people like me.
So sadly, you lost your agent a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it was very shocking.
Yeah.
I
So we need to
wasn't-
find you an agent to make more of those things happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am looking for a new agent. I mean, I'm sure I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews the next month. The wonderful thing about living in Hollywood is that literally magic can happen anytime, any place, anywhere.
Just like
You never know who you're going to meet, what's going to happen, and it only happens if you live here.
Right.
You'll get a call for an audition tomorrow morning that you have to be up all night learning your lines for, or you'll go to a party. And I think what was one of the best piece of advice I got when I moved here, some guy said, if I knew then what I know now, I would have said, fuck college and just gone to after parties. Because that's really where, all the magic happens.
This person was meeting about building the relationships just when he's out there listening and assuming, right?
Yeah. It's really just about putting yourself out there and meeting people and just being your best sparkly self.
Yeah.
Because
playing. You as a kid in Denver.
Everybody here does something. They could be a producer or a director and say, hey, I think you'd be great for this. Will you come and read tomorrow? Yeah. I sure will.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's interesting because we talked about earlier, about with casting and stuff like that. When you show up, when you're out there with these people, you're maybe one who's inspiring the role versus showing up for the role.
Sure.
This just kind of goes back to earlier about talking about representation is so important.
Yeah.
So when you're representing yourself.
Yeah. The more confidence you exude, the better you feel about yourself. That comes across.
Yeah.
It really does. And if you're in your head and you're worried about how you're being perceived, that shows too.
Yeah, there's a block there.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just have to say, let it go and fuck it.
Yeah. That's some good advice right there.
Put that on a shirt and sell
it. With everything that's going on right now, obviously your summer plans have probably changed a little bit with what we've been allowed to do in a safe manner. What fun stuff? It's interesting. Like when anything happens, it's like, I was like, you can look at it. It's like, but then there's always new opportunities. So I'd love to hear just like some of the cool stuff you've been able to do in the last month or so, or just in general, what you got looking forward to.
This whole shutdown, at least for me, was a blessing because it's easy to get overwhelmed, especially in a big city like this where, it's almost like you're constantly trying to scoop buckets of water out of the lifeboat as you're going down, trying to keep up with the Joneses or just trying to keep your head above water and carve out a place for yourself. And this whole time being at home, was very, obviously did a lot of self-reflection, a lot of adulting, getting caught up on things that I needed to. And also it actually gave me a pretty good sense of community because a lot of the shows from the bars and clubs moved to digital. And so all of a sudden I was doing shows all over the country again, with people, with other performers from all over the country, and just the sisterhood and the camaraderie of it was very inspiring. And now that we're slowly coming out of our hovels, we have better relationships and better understandings of each other, especially among women. It doesn't matter if you're cis or trans. Women are very competitive. So there's always, even though we're sisters, probably not going to word this right, but it was like coming out of it, there's none of that. We just support each other and lifted each other up because we're all in the same boat.
It's the coffee maker.
Oh.
It's turning off.
Coffee's ready, sisters.
Yeah.
Yay.
Come and get it.
The fresh hot tea right here.
Right. Like hearing you say that, all that I kept hearing was like, when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade, right? And I just feel like this whole situation for everybody, it's really just like what we've made out of it. Like you could have just been sitting at home worried about what's going to happen next and when the next gig is going to come through, especially like here, like so much of all production was shut down.
Yeah. And there's so many people here that work from gig to gig to gig. Like full-time employment is not prevalent here.
Right.
We all work by the project. And for the first time, I wasn't worrying about those things. I wasn't having to worry about how am I going to pay my bills this month, or can I pay my bills this month, or meeting deadlines, or just trying to maintain a social life. It was a very welcome break. And I definitely feel more centered and balanced and, ready to just get back out there and grab life by the balls.
Here we go.
Yeah. And now coming out of the shutdown too, I work for a production company here, Brad Hammer Productions, where I'm the full-time art director. And we get to work with so many amazing artists, a lot of RuPaul's Drag Race stars. And now we're expanding into Grindr and other big corporations. And we've been doing a lot of Black Lives Matter content and doing important things, important work that impacts people, And I think going forward, I want to do things that are more influential and that have meaning behind them.
Yeah, which is, looking back and like years just getting to know you a little bit better today, there's something about, like, we were taught as children, right? Like when you go camping, like leave the campsite better than you found it when you go out into nature. And I feel like because you've leaned in just a little bit, like, when you've gotten those pushes when you need them, you've left Denver, you've left Chicago, you've left it a better place than you found it. And you yourself as an individual, you are a better person because of that. Who we see today here, being able to do what you do today on a larger scale, and even now with some of the stuff that was shut down, that when you were able to come together via media with some of these people in different parts of the country, that became available for everyone. So in some ways, it's been a bigger audience, and it's been, and I think that there'll be some hybrid stuff coming out of this that will continue. It's been such a fun time to be able to sit here and just also continue to watch. Like, anyone who's listening, Aurora, can you give us your Instagram? We'll put it also on the website. But
sure, my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff is Aurora Sexton.
Perfect. Anthony and I have been really looking forward to have just spending some time with just you're a beautiful human being, and I knew that coming into this. But sitting with you in person has been it's just been such a jewel. You radiate just love and wisdom and just joy, and I really can't thank you enough for being here today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That means a lot. I've enjoyed. You need to be my new publicist.
Hey, we can make anything happen. That's what we do. We get stuff done here.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed my time with you guys, and I enjoy every time I get to put my thoughts out in the world, and hopefully they boomerang back in the form of helping others.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, guys.
It just goes to show you, when you put your mind to it, anything is possible. We just love Aurora's story and hope you enjoyed it too. If you want to stay connected with Aurora, be sure to follow her on Instagram and Twitter at Aurora Sexton. Thanks for listening to this episode of Talk Out Loud. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe, rate us, and share with a friend. You can also follow us on social media at Talk Out Loud Live. If you or someone you know has an inspirational story and a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on our website at www.talkoutloudlive.com. You can also get your official Talk Out Loud gear in our online store. Thanks again for listening, and remember to be true, be you, and to talk out loud.